Do you think central heating, personal plumbing, or even advanced medical care are recent inventions? What if we told you that many of these surprising comforts were already a part of daily life in medieval convents, as far back as the 12th century? Number 1. Dedicated spa and bathing facilities. In the modern world, a spa day is a luxury, a chance to unwind and refresh. We associate elaborate bathing rituals with Roman times, or perhaps the Victorian era. Surprisingly, medieval convents often stereotyped as austere and devoid of personal indulgence, sometimes housed sophisticated bathing facilities that would make many a modern person pause in wonder. These were not just quick washrooms. Some convents possessed dedicated bathhouses, communal or sometimes even private, that went beyond simple hygiene to embrace a sense of ritual and well-being. Consider the substantial ruins of bathhouses found at some larger monastic sites, structures built with a clear purpose beyond mere functionality. Historical records suggest that regular bathing, while perhaps not daily for everyone, was certainly more common and more thorough in these communities than the popular imagination often allows. The Rules of Saint Benedict, the foundational text for many monastic orders, emphasized cleanliness, both spiritual and physical, even if it did not explicitly detail elaborate bathing schedules. However, individual abbesses and communities often interpreted and expanded upon these rules, prebonetizing health and comfort for their residents. Archaeological digs at sites like Fontfroid-Abbey in France, a powerful and influential convent during the medieval period, have unearthed evidence of complex water systems designed not just for drinking and cooking, but also for personal hygiene. These systems often involved carefully constructed pipes and drains leading to specific areas designated for washing. In some cases, there might have been a communal bathhouse where nuns could bathe on certain days, perhaps in shifts, maintaining a sense of community even in their personal care. Imagine the steam, the warmth, and the quiet conversation in a dedicated bathing room, a stark contrast to the rough and ready image many people have of medieval life. The water itself, often sourced from fresh springs or diverted streams through ingenious aqueduct systems, would have been clean and abundant. For the ill or infirm, special provisions were often made within the convent infirmary, which included bathing facilities designed for those needing gentle care or therapeutic treatments. These bathing spaces were not merely practical. They represented a commitment to the physical well-being of the sisters, recognizing that a healthy body contributed to a healthy mind and spirit. The sophisticated plumbing required to bring water to these bathhouses and then drain it away speaks volumes about the engineering prowess present within these seemingly isolated communities. It was a clear indication that even in the heart of the Middle Ages, comfort and cleanliness were not entirely overlooked, especially within the structured and well-resourced world of a prosperous convent. Number 2. Integrated waste management systems. The concept of a municipal waste management system, with its bins, collection trucks, and processing plants, feels distinctly modern, a product of urbanization and public health awareness. Yet surprisingly advanced and organized waste management systems were an integral part of life in many medieval convents, designed to maintain hygiene and prevent disease in tightly packed communities. These were not just haphazard pits, they were often carefully planned architectural features. The medieval period, particularly in monastic institutions, placed a strong emphasis on order and cleanliness, not just for aesthetic reasons, but also for practical health. With many people living in close proximity within the convent walls, efficient disposal of waste was crucial to prevent the spread of illness and to maintain a habitable environment. One of the most common and impressive examples was the system of latrines, often built over flowing water channels. These channels, sometimes diverting a small stream or river, would carry away human waste directly from the privies, ensuring it did not accumulate within the convent grounds. This foresight in sanitation was truly remarkable for its time, predating widespread urban sewage systems by centuries. Historical records and archaeological excavations at sites like Vaux Abbey in England show elaborate reodorters, which were communal latrine blocks often multi-seated, with sophisticated flushing mechanisms powered by diverted water. The design was not just about waste removal, it was about preventing odors and maintaining a cleaner environment than was typical in most medieval towns. Beyond human waste, convents also produced kitchen waste, garden waste, and refuse from workshops. For organic waste, composting was a common practice, with scraps and trimmings being returned to the earth to enrich garden soil. This early form of recycling was born out of necessity, but demonstrated an understanding of sustainable practices. Non-organic waste, such as broken pottery, metal scraps, or worn-out textiles, would have been collected and either reused, repurposed, or disposed of in designated pits or dumps located at a safe distance from the main living quarters. These waste pits, while still rudimentary by modern standards, were managed with a degree of intentionality, preventing general litter and maintaining a more organized communal space. The detailed planning involved in these systems, from the construction of aqueducts for water supply to the design of sophisticated drainage for waste removal, highlights a pragmatic approach to daily living within the convent. It shows that hygiene was not a forgotten concept in the Middle Ages, but rather a carefully considered aspect of communal life, especially within the well-ordered and often wealthy institutions like convents. They were, in a very real sense, pioneering early forms of environmental health and public sanitation. Number 3. Time management devices and structured schedules. In our digital age, time management is a constant buzzword, with apps and planners designed to optimize every minute. We rely on smartwatches, phones, and precise clocks to structure our days. Yet even in the medieval period, convents operated with an almost astonishing level of temporal precision, guided by sophisticated timekeeping devices and rigorous daily schedules. These were not just vague estimations. They were attempts at exactitude, a testament to the importance of order and spiritual observance. The monastic day was meticulously divided into periods for prayer, work, study, and rest, known as the Liturgy of the Hours or the Divine Office. To ensure these activities were performed at their precise times, various methods of time-telling were employed. One of the earliest and most widespread was the use of bells. Convents had bell towers, and the ringing of bells at specific intervals throughout the day and night served as an audible clock for everyone within earshot. Different bell patterns or sequences could signify different hours or activities, guiding the nuns through their daily routine. For more precise measurements, especially during daylight hours, sundials were commonly used. These were carefully calibrated instruments, often carved into stone or painted onto walls, providing a visual indication of the time based on the sun's shadow. The accuracy of a sundial depended on its careful placement and design, and many convents boasted impressive examples. However, sundials were useless at night or on cloudy days. For continuous timekeeping, particularly important for the nocturnal prayer vigils, water clocks, or clepsydras were employed. These devices, which measured time by the regulated flow of water, could operate continuously and were among the most advanced time-telling technologies available in the medieval world. While perhaps not as precise as a modern atomic clock, they offered a consistent and reliable measure of passing hours. Later in the medieval period, mechanical clocks began to emerge, often monumental devices installed in churches or bell towers. While perhaps less common in smaller convents, larger and wealthier institutions might have invested in these groundbreaking inventions, further enhancing their ability to maintain a precise schedule. The adherence to this strict timetable was not merely about efficiency. It was deeply intertwined with the spiritual life of the convent, ensuring that all nuns participated in communal prayers and duties at the appointed times. This structured approach to daily life, with its clear divisions of time and dedicated activities, foreshadows modern concepts of productivity and time management. It demonstrates that, even without digital tools, medieval convents fostered an environment where time was valued, measured, and carefully allocated, ensuring a harmonious and productive community life. Number 4. Sophisticated communication networks. In our hyper-connected world, instant messaging and global communication networks are a given, allowing us to send information across continents in seconds. It seems impossible that anything remotely similar could have existed in the medieval period. Yet, medieval convents, far from being entirely isolated islands, were often nodes within surprisingly sophisticated and far-reaching communication networks, allowing them to exchange information, manage resources, and maintain connections with the outside world. These networks were vital for their survival and influence. The primary form of communication was, of course, the written letter. Convents were centers of literacy, particularly for women, in an age when most of the population was illiterate. Nuns, especially those in leadership roles like the abbess, would regularly write and receive letters corresponding with bishops, nobles, other monastic houses, and even royalty. These letters were not just personal notes. They conveyed official business, discussed political matters, sought patronage, exchanged scholarly ideas, and sometimes even shared medical knowledge. The careful preservation of these letters in monastic archives provides invaluable insights into medieval society. To transport these letters, convents relied on a system of messengers. While there was no postal service, as we know it, convents often had their own dedicated messengers, or relied on a network of monastic couriers who would travel between different houses of the same order. These messengers were often members of the community or trusted servants, and their journeys could cover significant distances, enduring the perils of medieval travel. Beyond the written word, oral communication played a crucial role. Visitors, pilgrims, and merchants passing through the convent provided news and gossip from afar, acting as informal conduits of information. Important announcements from the outside world, such as papal decrees or royal edicts, would be communicated through ecclesiastical channels, reaching the convents through bishops or visiting clergy. For highly influential convents, the communication network extended to the highest levels of power. An abbess might have direct correspondence with the Pope or with powerful monarchs influencing political and religious affairs. Take, for example, Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century abbess who corresponded widely with emperors, popes, and kings, offering advice and prophetic warnings. Her influence spread across Europe largely, thanks to her extensive and effective communication network. The very existence of multiple convents within the same monastic order meant that there was a built-in system for sharing information, resources, and personnel. Chapter meetings, where representatives from different houses gathered, served as a form of inter-convent communication and policy-making. These sophisticated systems demonstrate that medieval convents were far from cut off. They were actively engaged with the world, using the best available technologies and organization structures to maintain their influence and manage their complex affairs. Number 5. Datated, healthstelle, and infirmary services. When we think of healthcare, our minds jump to hospitals, doctors, nurses, and advanced medical technology. The idea of organized medical care existing in the medieval period might seem primitive at best, or non-existent. Yet one of the most astonishing modern conveniences found in many medieval convents was their dedicated, often sophisticated healthcare and infirmary services. These were not just places for the sick to rest. They were often centers of medical knowledge and care, predating public hospitals by centuries. Every significant convent had an infirmary, a dedicated building or wing specifically designed for the care of the sick, elderly, and infirm members of the community. These infirmaries were often surprisingly well equipped, with individual beds, heating systems, and sometimes even private latrines to ensure comfort and hygiene for patients. The design of these infirmaries often incorporated good ventilation and natural light elements recognized even then as beneficial for healing. The nuns themselves often served as caregivers. While they might not have had formal medical degrees as we understand them today, many nuns received practical training in herbal medicine, nursing, and basic medical procedures. Some convents were renowned for their medical expertise, attracting individuals from outside the convent seeking care. The Abbess Hildegard of Bingen, for instance, was not only a mystic and composer, but also a keen observer of nature and human health. Her writings, particularly Physica and Causae et Curae, describe a vast pharmacopoeia of herbs, plants, and natural remedies, along with practical medical advice for various ailments. Her work highlights the deep understanding of medicinal plants and their uses within convents. Convent gardens were not just for food. They typically included extensive herb gardens or physic gardens, specifically cultivated for medicinal plants. These gardens would supply the ingredients for salves, poultices, tinctures, and teas used to treat a wide range of conditions, from fevers and infections to pain and digestive issues. The process of preparing these remedies required significant knowledge of botany and chemistry. Beyond herbal remedies, convent infirmaries might have had access to some basic surgical instruments for minor procedures like setting bones or lancing boils. Though major surgery was rare and dangerous in any setting during that era, care extended beyond physical ailments to spiritual and emotional support, recognizing the holistic nature of well-being. Elderly nuns spent their final years in the infirmary receiving continuous care, while those recovering from illness were given time and appropriate diets to regain their strength. The existence of these well-organized and knowledgeable healthcare centers within convents demonstrates a profound commitment to the welfare of their community members. They were pioneers in institutionalized care, providing a level of medical attention that was often superior to what was available to the general population outside the convent walls. Number 6. Advanced food preparation and preservation techniques. When we think of medieval food, images of bland gruel or rough, simple fare often come to mind. We take for granted our refrigerators, freezers, and industrialized food processing that allow us to preserve and prepare food with ease. Yet, in medieval convents, incredibly sophisticated techniques for food preparation and preservation were not just common. They were essential for survival and self-sufficiency, often rivaling or even surpassing what was available in many lay households. These were not primitive methods. They were carefully honed skills passed down through generations. Convents often owned extensive agricultural lands, cultivating grains, vegetables, and fruit. They also raised livestock, ensuring a steady supply of meat, milk, and eggs. This meant that the convent kitchens were busy, processing a vast array of raw ingredients. One of the most remarkable aspects was the sheer scale and ingenuity of their preservation methods. Smoking was a common technique for meat and fish, turning them into long-lasting provisions. Dedicated smokehouses, often substantial stone structures, would have been part of the convent complex, allowing large quantities of food to be cured over extended periods. Salting was another crucial method, particularly for preserving fish and meat. Barrels of salted herring or beef were common sights in convent storerooms, providing vital protein throughout the year, especially during periods of fasting when meat was restricted. Drying was used extensively for fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Apples, pears, and plums would be sun-dried or air-dried, while various herbs were hung in bundles to preserve their flavor and medicinal properties for later use. Cellars and cool storage rooms, often dug deep into the ground or built with thick stone walls, provided natural refrigeration for root, vegetables, cheese, and fermented products like beer and wine. These cellars maintained a consistent, cool temperature, ideal for preventing spoilage. Convent kitchens themselves were often remarkably well equipped. They featured large hearths and ovens, capable of baking enormous quantities of bread, which was a staple of the monastic diet. Evidence suggests specialized ovens for different types of baking, from common loaves to more refined pastries for special occasions. They possessed a variety of cooking vessels made of iron, copper, and pottery, along with an array of knives, ladles, and other implements for preparing food. The practice of brewing beer or making wine was also common, serving not only as a beverage, but also as a form of food preservation due to its alcohol content, which acted as a natural preservative. These drinks were safer to consume than often contaminated water sources. The detailed kitchen management, from harvesting and butchering to cooking and preserving, required considerable organization and skill among the sisters and their lay staff. These advanced techniques ensured that the convent community had a consistent and varied food supply even through harsh winters or periods of scarcity, a level of food security that many in the medieval world could only dream of. Number 7. Comprehensive educational and information access systems. In an age where information is literally at our fingertips, access to vast digital libraries and instant searches, it is hard to imagine a world where knowledge was scarce and difficult to obtain. Yet, surprisingly, medieval convents served as comprehensive centers of education and information access, often surpassing secular institutions in their dedication to learning and the preservation of knowledge. These were not merely places of spiritual contemplation. They were intellectual powerhouses. The most prominent example of this was the scriptorium, a dedicated room or area where nuns engaged in the laborious but vital task of copying and illuminating manuscripts. In a time before the printing press, every book was handmade, and convents played a crucial role in the preservation and dissemination of texts, both religious and secular. Nuns meticulously copied Bibles, liturgical texts, theological treatises, classical works, and even scientific and medical texts. Many nuns became highly skilled scribes and illuminators, creating beautiful and enduring works of art. This dedication to copying meant that convents amassed impressive libraries which were veritable treasure troves of knowledge. These libraries were often far more extensive and diverse than those found in many noble households, providing the nuns with access to a wide range of written materials. Access to these books was not just for the elite. It was an integral part of the monastic life, with reading being a fundamental duty. Beyond copying, convents were also centers of learning where literacy was highly valued. Nuns were taught to read and write, often in Latin, the universal language of scholarship and the church. This level of literacy was exceptionally high for women in the medieval period and allowed them to engage directly with complex theological and philosophical ideas. Some convents even fostered intellectual inquiry and original scholarship. Figures like Hrotsbitha of Gandersheim, a 10th century canoness, wrote Latin dramas, poems, and historical works, demonstrating sophisticated literary talent. Her works were disseminated and read widely, making her one of the earliest known female playwrights in the Western world. Hildegard of Bingen, mentioned earlier, produced extensive writings on theology, medicine, and music, solidifying her place as one of the most significant intellectual figures of the 12th century. Convents provided the environment, the resources, and the intellectual freedom for such figures to flourish. For the general community, the convent also served as a local educational hub, sometimes offering schooling to noble daughters or even the children of local peasants. While not as formal as modern schools, these educational efforts brought literacy and knowledge to a wider audience. In essence, medieval convents were early versions of universities and public libraries, preserving, creating, and disseminating knowledge in an era when such activities were far from widespread. They were vital custodians of learning, ensuring that the flame of intellectual inquiry continued to burn brightly through the Middle Ages. Number 8. Personal privacy and dedicated living spaces. In our modern world, the concept of a private room, a personal sanctuary within a home, is often considered a basic expectation for comfort and well-being. When thinking about medieval convents, one might imagine dormitory-style living, with little to no personal space. However, surprisingly, many medieval convents offered their residents a remarkable degree of personal privacy and dedicated living spaces, moving beyond simple communal dormitories as they evolved. While earlier monastic traditions often emphasized communal sleeping in large dormitories, the later medieval period, especially in wealthier or reformed convents, saw a shift towards more individualized living arrangements. Many nuns were provided with their own cells, small private rooms that served as their personal sanctuary. These cells, though modest in size, were crucial for personal contemplation, study, and rest, offering a quiet retreat from the communal life. These cells were not entirely devoid of comfort. They often contained a bed, a simple table, a chair, and perhaps a small chest for personal belongings. Crucially, many cells featured a window allowing natural light and ventilation and offering a view of the cloister garden or the outside world. While not the sprawling multi-room apartments we might desire today, these private spaces provided a significant level of personal autonomy and comfort compared to the general living conditions of the time. The ability to retreat to one's own space was not just a luxury, it was also a practical necessity for study and prayer. For those nuns engaged in scholarly work, copying manuscripts, or composing music, a quiet and private environment was essential for concentration. The privacy afforded by these cells also supported individual spiritual practice, allowing for uninterrupted prayer and meditation. The layout of the convent itself often reinforced this balance between communal and private life. Cloister, the enclosed courtyard at the heart of the convent, served as a central hub for walking, meditation, and quiet interaction. Radiating off the cloister would be the chapter house for meetings, the refectory for communal meals, and the church for worship, all designed for communal activities. But the individual cells, often located in a separate dormitory wing, provided the necessary counterpoint of solitude. For higher-ranking nuns, such as the abbess or prioress, their living quarters were often more substantial, sometimes even including an antechamber or a small private chapel. These larger spaces reflected their administrative duties and the need to receive visitors or conduct private business. The evolution towards private cells represented a growing recognition within monastic orders of the importance of individual space for mental and spiritual well-being. It challenged the notion that all aspects of monastic life had to be entirely communal. This provision of dedicated private living spaces, complete with windows and basic furnishings, demonstrates a surprising level of personal consideration within these medieval communities, offering a comfort and privacy that was far from universal. Number 9. Sophisticated centralized heating systems. When we shiver in the cold, we simply adjust our thermostat or turn up the central heating. This marvel of modern comfort feels like a truly recent invention, a product of the industrial age. However, to the surprise of many, some medieval convents, particularly the wealthier and more advanced ones, incorporated remarkably sophisticated centralized heating systems that provided warmth throughout key communal areas, often using methods that would not be entirely unfamiliar to an ancient Roman or even a modern engineer. These were not just open fires in every room, they were attempts at distributing heat efficiently. The most common and impressive example of such a system was the hypocaust, a method inherited from Roman engineering. While more common in ancient Roman baths and villas, its principles were applied in some medieval monastic buildings. A hypocaust system involved a furnace or firebox located outside the main heated space, typically in a basement or an adjacent room. Hot air from this furnace would then be directed through channels or flues beneath the floor, and sometimes within the walls of the rooms above. The stone or tile floors would absorb this heat, and radiated upwards, providing a radiant form of warmth. This system was particularly effective in spaces like the kale factory, a dedicated warming room where nuns could gather to warm themselves, dry clothes, or thaw their hands, especially during the harsh winter months. This was a crucial amenity for comfort and health. Beyond hypocausts, many convents employed innovative uses of large, well-constructed fireplaces and flues to circulate heat. While not strictly central heating in the modern sense, the design of these fireplaces in communal rooms like the refectory or chapter house was often operated to project heat efficiently into the space, sometimes even with rudimentary systems to draw warm air into adjacent smaller rooms. The strategic placement of these heating elements, coupled with robust construction using thick stone walls and insulated roofs, helped to retain heat within the buildings. Convents also often made use of fireboxes or portable braziers for localized heating. But the presence of permanent, built-in systems designed to warm large areas stands out. The resources required to construct and maintain these heating systems were substantial. They demanded skilled masons, a constant supply of fuel wood, and a clear understanding of heat transfer. The investment in such comforts speaks volumes about the importance placed on the well-being of the monastic community. It was not merely about survival in the cold. It was about creating a habitable and comfortable environment conducive to study, work, and spiritual life. These medieval heating systems, though different from our own, represent a significant leap in environmental control, demonstrating an ingenuity in managing their climate that far exceeds what one might expect from the Middle Ages. Number 10. Advanced plumbing and running water systems. When we turn on a tap, clean water flows instantly, a convenience we rarely give a second thought. This effortless access to running water seems like a hallmark of the last century or two. However, medieval convents, particularly the larger and more prosperous ones, possessed remarkably advanced plumbing and running water systems that brought fresh water directly into their complexes for various uses. A testament to sophisticated engineering and a strong emphasis on hygiene and efficiency. These were not simply wells. They were often elaborate water management systems. Many convents were strategically built near natural springs or rivers, which served as their primary water sources. To bring this water directly into the convent, complex systems of aqueducts and conduits were constructed. These could be gravity-fed channels, sometimes open, sometimes enclosed in stone pipes, designed to transport water over significant distances, and often across varied terrain, maintaining a constant downhill gradient. Once the water reached the convent, it was meticulously distributed to different areas. Kitchen would have a dedicated water supply for cooking and washing dishes. The lavatorium, a washing area typically located in the cloister near the refectory, provided running water for the nuns to wash their hands before meals. These lavatoria often featured multiple spouts or basins, allowing several people to wash simultaneously. For sanitation, many convents utilized sophisticated latrines or privies built over flowing water channels. These channels would continuously carry away human waste, effectively acting as an early form of a flushing toilet system far more hygienic than the cesspits common in towns and villages of the time. This ingenious design helped prevent the spread of disease and maintain a cleaner environment within the monastic enclosure. Beyond daily use, running water was also essential for specialized areas. The infirmary, the convent's medical facility, would have had dedicated water access for patient care, hygiene, and the preparation of herbal remedies. The brewery and bakery, vital for the convent's self-sufficiency, also required substantial water supplies for their operations. Water was often filtered or directed into holding tanks or cisterns to ensure a consistent supply and to allow for some settlement of impurities. The engineering skills required to design, construct, and maintain these water systems were substantial. They involved surveying, masonry, and an understanding of hydraulics, reflecting a level of technical expertise often overlooked in popular perceptions of the medieval period. The extensive network of pipes, drains, and channels demonstrates a clear understanding of the importance of clean water for health, hygiene, and the efficient operation of a large community. These convents were in many ways pioneers in urban planning and public health infrastructure, providing their inhabitants with a level of water access that was truly astounding for the Middle Ages. Number 11. Specialized workshops and proto-manufacturing. Our modern economy thrives on specialized industries, factories, and the division of labor. The idea of large-scale specialized production seems utterly alien to the medieval period, often associated with small-scale craft production. Yet medieval convents often functioned as impressive hubs of specialized workshops and proto-manufacturing, producing a wide array of goods, not just for their own consumption, but often for trade and sale, demonstrating a surprising level of economic activity and industrial organization. These were not simply women doing chores. These were highly skilled artisans engaged in sophisticated production. Common and highly valued skill within convents was textile production. Nuns were involved in every stage of the process, from spinning wool or flax into thread, to weaving fabric on looms, to dyeing and embroidering finished goods. Convents produced high-quality vestments for religious services, blankets, clothing for the community, and even elaborate tapestries and altar cloths for sale or as gifts to benefactors. Quality of their work was often exceptional, making their textiles highly sought after. Beyond textiles, many convents operated scriptoria, which functioned as publishing houses of their time. As mentioned earlier, nuns meticulously copied and illuminated manuscripts. This involved not only the painstaking act of writing, but also the preparation of parchment, the mixing of pigments, and the creation of intricate illustrations and decorative initials. This was a complex, multi-stage production process, requiring specialized skills and a division of labor. Convents also often engaged in food and beverage production on a scale beyond simple sustenance. Many had breweries, producing beer or ale, which was a staple drink due to water quality issues. Some produced wine, especially in regions with vineyards. These operations required specific equipment, knowledge of fermentation, and dedicated space, sometimes even operating as commercial ventures. Other specialized workshops included those for metalwork, particularly for creating liturgical objects, like chalices, crosses, and reliquaries. Some convents had kilns for pottery or brick-making, producing building materials or everyday vessels. There might also be workshops for leatherworking, carpentry, or even the creation of specific medicinal remedies or perfumes. The nuns were often not just consumers of these goods, but were the skilled laborers and managers of these production processes. This required training, organization, and a clear understanding of supply chains, raw materials, and quality control. The economic impact of these convent workshops was significant. They provided a livelihood for many within the community, allowed for self-sufficiency, and generated income through trade. They were centers of innovation, skill, and specialized labor, prefiguring the structured industrial production we associate with later eras. These medieval convents were not just places of prayer and contemplation. They were dynamic, productive centers of proto-manufacturing, achieving a surprising level of economic and organizational sophistication.